Hello everyone, thank you for your interest in our study, and I'm Suk, currently a PhD student at Clemson University. A little bit about myself: I'm a sport guy and my research area focuses on sport consumer behavior. And also here are my co-authors, Dr. Ryan Gagnon and Parisa Hadiandehkordi. Today we'll be presenting on a topic titled Benefits and Challenges of Overparenting Within an Emerging Youth Sport: Parental Spending, Volunteering, and Competitive Longevity in Competition Climbing. So first of all, I guess we should all know what overparenting means. In a simple term, overparenting is a group of typically appropriate parental behaviors taken to an excessive level. This phenomenon is an emerging concern for professionals facilitating youth programs. And the reason why parents show overparenting behaviors is because of the increased expectations for youth to succeed at elite levels, both academics and extracurriculars, to gain entry into college. Until now, the negative consequences of overparenting are somewhat evident within academic contexts serving youth, such as decreased child academic performance, perceived autonomy, independence, self-efficacy, self-esteem, communication quality, and also goal-setting behaviors. Again, these are evidences from the academic context. But on the other side, we are not sure about the challenges as well as the potential benefits associated with overparenting in out-of-school time settings. And therefore, we aim to examine the potential upsides of overparenting within a context of an emerging Olympic youth sport: indoor competition climbing. Here are the questions that we're interested in. So, do overparents spend more money in their child's sport? Second, do overparents volunteer more in their child's sport? And third, do youth athletes participate longer in their sport due to the overparenting behavior? And lastly, how does overparenting influence the social-emotional development among youth athletes? So, as explained earlier, overparenting is a group of typically appropriate parental behaviors taken to an excessive degree, where it often negatively impacts on child's social-emotional development. On the other hand, normative parental behaviors such as problem-solving, decision-making, monitoring, risk avoidance, and support are generally associated with child-positive outcomes. And these outcomes include increased resilience to adverse life events, greater level of independence, and higher rates of self-confidence. However, the absence of these same parental behaviors can increase rates of maladaptive child outcomes and behaviors including poor emotional adjustment, aggression, and anxiety. But when the same behaviors shift to a level reflected in overparenting, we can increase rates of child depression, anxiety, and academic entitlement. In the context of youth sport, studies have revealed that parents were excessively involved in activities of their children, where it may potentially stifle child's development as emerging adults, and also create additional stress for the staff or coaches working with these young athletes. And further, in the context of competitive youth sport, researchers have illustrated that overly parental involvement was detrimental to a child's performance, both in terms of competitive success as well as personal enjoyment of the sport. Besides the negative consequences, there are some benefits of overparenting as well. For instance, parents tend to become more financially, socially, and emotionally committed as their involvement increases within a child's sport. Especially in the context of youth sport specialization among young athletes, overparenting behaviors may lead to a greater level of financial investment on specialized coaching, equipment, and travel fees for the success of their child's sport career. Beyond financial investment, there may also be relations between parental investment of time as being a volunteer, since among entry-level coaches, nearly 90% are parents of youth athletes on the team they were coaching. Also, studies have revealed that the involvement of parents within sport as a coach, judge, or managers has been linked to increasing positive developmental outcomes for youth athletes. So with the support from the previous literature, here are our hypotheses. First, the primary hypotheses are that overparenting will have a positive direct effect on parental spending and parental volunteering in youth sport, as well as competitive sport longevity among youth, while having a negative effect on parental perceptions of social emotional development of their children. Second, we hypothesize that increasing rate of parental spending, parental volunteering, and competitive sport longevity among youth athletes would have a positive direct effect on parental perceptions of social emotional development of their children. For data collection, they were collected over a 45-day period in winter 2016. Respondents were offered a drawing entry to win one of the 3 climbing packages, valued $170 each, in order to increase study participation. In partnership with USA Climbing, we have administered a web-based Qualtrics questionnaire through a link provided via USA Climbing's Facebook page and their member email list. This process led to 302 respondents identifying as parents of youth competition climbers. But after screening for outliers, the final sample of our study was 297. In terms of participants, they were primarily female and white. The majority of respondents had a bachelor's degree or greater with high levels of household income. Also, parents reported an average of a little over $1,100 spent annually on expenses related to climbing. For the measurement, competitive sport longevity among youth was measured by asking parents to report on the total number of years their child had participated in competition climbing. For parental volunteering, parents were asked if they volunteered for competition climbing events with a yes or no question. For parental sport spending, parents were asked to report their spending using categories recommended by USA Climbing. For overparenting, we used a validated scale from Gagnon and Gar's 2019 study, which comprised of 5 items measured on a 1 to 7 Likert type scale, with high scores indicating higher levels of overparenting behaviors. And lastly, for parental perceptions of youth social emotional development, the PPDO, which stands for Parental Perceptions of Developmental Outcome Scale, was used, as it is suitable in out-of-school time settings validated in Gagnon and Gar's 2019 study. Before analyzing our data, we screened for multivariate outliers using a combination of Mahalanobis distance and the chi-square distribution function in SPSS 27. We found 15 participants as multivariate non-normal, so they were removed from further examination. Next, the data were screened for multivariate normality and homoscedasticity in RStudio using the Hawkins test in the mismatch package, where it indicated that the data were non-normal in their distribution. So we use robust maximum likelihood estimation techniques to further examine the data, tests of model fit, and for later hypotheses testing. And the data were then screened for systematic causes of missingness by employing a robust version of Little's test of missing completely at random in the mismatch R package. The result of this analysis were non-significant, indicating that the missing data were missing completely at random. So a full information maximum likelihood technique was applied in preceding analyses to simulate missing values. Before hypothesis testing, the scales were examined through a CFA and supporting statistics. And the results of the CFA suggested one item from the overparenting factor was harming the overall model fit and was removed from the model. And CFA indicated acceptable model fit, Cronbach's alpha levels, average variance extracted levels, as well as factor loadings. Finally, study hypotheses were then tested through a structural equation model, which also indicated appropriate model fit. Specifically, we failed to reject hypotheses 1A through 1D, where overparenting had no significant effect on parental spending, parental volunteering, competitive sport longevity among youth, or PPDO, which is the parental perceptions of youth social emotional development level. And we also failed to reject hypotheses 2B, where parental volunteering had no effect on PPDO. But as hypothesized, both parental spending and competitive sport longevity among youth had a positive direct influence on PPDO. Here, I'll discuss the results of our finding. So even though excessive parental involvement and spending in youth sport is evident from previous scholars, overparenting did not have a relation with parental sport spending in our study. And this may be due to the minimum amount of financial capital required for an athlete to participate in competition climbing, and therefore exhibiting a strong floor effect. And another reason is that as parental sport investment or involvement in child sport increase, studies have found that parents tend to be less emotionally reactive to adverse events facing their children during competition. And so the de-escalation of overparenting could explain the lack of relation between overparenting and parental spending in their child's sport. And this de-escalation of overparenting behaviors over time could also explain the lack of relation between overparenting and competitive sport longevity among youth. And for the lack of relation between overparenting and parental volunteering, it could be due to the coarseness of our volunteering measure, where it does not capture the potential depth of volunteering. So in order to overcome this issue, we try to further employ a post-hoc analysis by examining the predictive effect of overparenting on number of years as a parental volunteer. But this also showed non-significant results. But we believe that the lack of relation may illustrate a future investigative path to determine if or how overparenting influences parental volunteering in their child's sport. Next, our result indicated overparenting did not have a relation with PPDO. And this may be because in our study, parents reported on their own parenting behaviors and their observation of developmental outcomes of their child. But instead, children may be more accurate in terms of reporting their parental behaviors. So it may be an important future direction to include both reports of children and their parents to see if there are meaningful differences in reports of overparenting. Similarly, parental volunteering did not have an effect on PPDO scores. But even though we found a non-significant result in our study, previous studies have suggested that greater levels of parental volunteering and involvements are associated with positive outcomes for both the youth athletes and parents. So again, it is recommended to use a more in-depth parental volunteering measures which it may yield differing results in future investigations. For our significant results, parental spending did have a positive direct influence of PPDO. So it could be explained that parental financial investment is more valuable than parental investment as a volunteer for the achievement of social emotional outcomes of youth athletes. And lastly, competitive sport longevity among youth did have a positive relation with PPDO scores, where the result is congruent with other research exploring the potential development and social emotional benefits realized by youth athletes from their long-term sport participation. So overall, there are a few implications for practice from our study findings. First, the lack of relation between overparenting and parental volunteering may mitigate program administrators' concern related to policing overparenting behaviors and parents being turned off from volunteering, as there appears to be no relation between the two. Second, as overparenting did have a positive impact on the levels of competitive sport longevity among youth or PPDO levels, these findings have provided an important take-home message for coaches to strengthen the policy of restricting overparenting-like behaviors among parents within the competitive sport environment. And lastly, the findings of a positive association between competitive sport longevity among youth and higher levels of PPDO provide additional support for the value of repeated high quality out of school time experiences, as long-term participation in sport would enhance social emotional development among youth athletes. Beside the positive aspects of our study, we also have a few limitations that should be addressed. And first, we use a cross-sectional design where it limits inferences that could be made about how overparenting and the other measured variables may change over time. And second, as mentioned earlier, the study lagged reports of overparenting from the child's perspectives. So the addition of child reports of overparenting behaviors may yield more nuanced understanding of the potential benefits and consequences of overparenting. And lastly, the measurement of overparenting itself remain ambiguous, where it is unclear at what threshold parental behaviors may shift from appropriate to excessive level. So this is an important future direction to be addressed for future scholars. And this is it for our presentation, and thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you and bye-bye.